Hello and welcome everyone to the episode number 52 at the Indie Football Podcast. When we started this about 18 months ago, we were just looking around our shoulders at other people who were doing similar work. We did previews, reviews, but times have changed recently. We wanted to add a bit of a differential aspect to how we did, so we started highlighting stories around football, people doing some really significant work around the sport. With that precedent being established, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome our guest for this week, Charlotte Cromarty, who's joining us from a different time zone, and we as Indie Football Podcast probably should get used to it now. But but thank you, Charlotte. We are going to speak a lot about the other kinds of work that you do with your podcast. But thank you for joining us. How are you feeling tonight?
First of all, I just want to thank you both for inviting me on. It's an absolute pleasure. But I'm really good. How are you two? You all good?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Anuka sir, you deserve full credit in reaching out to Charlotte and somehow convincing her to do an episode with us. It must be fulfilling to finally see it happen, right?
Yeah, actually, I think it was like, get like a proper love story, getting into someone's DMs, not getting the replies, and then, getting into those anonymous messages again, not getting the replies at times. But eventually, through email, through those messages, somehow we got Charlotte on the podcast, and it was worth it. Like, it was totally worth it. And thank you, Charlotte, for coming here and
Thank
gracing
you
our
for inviting
podcast.
me.
Yeah, a huge pleasure that we did that. And honestly, like the work you guys have been doing recently, like as we know, Charlotte works on the Her Game 2 podcast. They got into a partnership with Liverpool FC, a club which is very close to me. And that was also one of the moments when I really wanted to call Charlotte on the podcast. She spreads great vibes on Twitter, and rest she can tell all about herself. But again, a huge welcome and a warm welcome from my side here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, Charlotte. This episode is basically not we did not do a lot of the pen and paper work that we usually do for other episodes. So it's basically about a celebration of your efforts, and we are confident that your work will inspire our audience in some way or the other. So please just start by telling us a bit about your journey as a football fan, and then you could also probably tell us a bit about your work. I'm sure we can learn a thing or two from you.
Yeah, so I'll start off. Not a lot of people are familiar with the team I support outside of England, but I support a team called Rochdale. They have just been relegated as well out of a football league, unfortunately. So Wrexham have took our spot now. We're down in National League, so I blame my dad. This is how it all started. He was actually a United fan as a child, my dad, but my grandma and granddad wouldn't let him go to the games because obviously it was a big club and they didn't want him going on his own. So they compromised with him going watching Rochdale. So I've been brought up a Rochdale fan now. And yeah, as much as it doesn't sound that appealing to people, because obviously you've got your Premier League clubs and around Rochdale, you've got like your Man Cities, your Liverpools, your Manchester United, even Bolton, Wigan. So there's a lot of big clubs around us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's all through my dad. Just started going games together. It first started. My football journey started. My first game was when I was around 4, and I just went because we had a mascot called Desmond the Dragon. We still have him now. And it was just to wave to him. And the pie's really, really good at Rochdale. So that was the reason I started going.
So
but then
probably you don't have your father to blame, but that mascot and the pie, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the most appealing bit about it back then. But obviously then I felt a buzz for Rochdale, going to games. We started going to away games too, became a season ticket holder. And then I just enjoyed watching football in general. Like no matter if it's male, women, if it's club, country, just football in general. I just love the idea of no matter where we are, like I'm on the opposite side of the world to you, but we can all like share interest in football and we can all celebrate football together. That's what I do love about it, the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anukar sir, I'm sure you will also resonate with it when I say that history is a big part of football, and especially in the UK. You know, like and where we have got so many divisions and people have such a strong connect with a football team, not so much at the beginning because of the new nuances of the sport, but more because of, you know, the place that they are from and how their families have brought them up with. So as a podcast, not only as a podcast but also as people, it's just rare for us to see people being such ardent supporters of clubs outside the Premier League, right, Anukasa?
Yeah, man, definitely. I mean, as you know, Charlotte talked about watching football and how much she enjoys watching football as a game, like may it be the men or the women. And honestly, like talking about history, like if I talk about Liverpool, 1890, it was formed in 1892. Rochdale, I think, was formed in 1907, if I'm not
Yeah,
wrong.
Yeah.
around
Charlotte,
that.
yeah. So I mean, clubs like that, you see, they have been running there for centuries, like for over a century now, and goes to show how much it means to the fan. The fans feel like a part of the club. When you know, like whenever players leave a certain club, they always talk about that they did it for the fans. And I think fans are the real players playing on the pitch. They are like the 12th man for every team. And it's people like Charlotte who inspire, I am sure, players on the pitch to do better. And I'm sure they will be fighting it out for promotion next season. And I mean, the women's game also, for that matter. I remember, Charlotte, I'd like to share an incident with you. It was last year. Dwaipayan and I had just started on on our podcast. It was, I think, 2 or 3 months into it, and the women's Euros were going on. And
Yeah,
the thing is that, with all due respect, the women's game is not so much televised in India as such. It had not been. So Doipan just told me that to watch a few matches, and I remember I was watching England
the
versus France. I
semi-final,
think,
the
yeah,
semi-final.
this is
Yeah,
the semi-final. England versus France. I think it was England versus Sweden. I think it was.
I think it was
I
France,
don't.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and watched that match, and my God, the pace of the game, the shots, and there was so much of intricate play, and I really loved it. And I remember texting him and putting up stories on Instagram and writing about it. And
Just
honestly,
just
like,
as a just as a side note, what I'd like to add is we almost thought to pivot from a podcast to a Beth Mead fan
yeah,
club, but all right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, that is our future plan. I just haven't told Doipan about it. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like the football as a game connects so many people, and countries alike. And again, like whatever you guys are doing with the podcast, that I'm sure has a profound effect not only on the people there, but also on a global level.
Yeah. Because I mean, Charlotte, what we basically want to know more about is we haven't had a lot of people doing a lot of work around women's football.
Yeah.
So given your experience, given your understanding, or all the years having spent as a fan, as a professional now, how do you think is the overall women's football scene, first in England, and then probably how do you see about it going on for the next 5 to 10 years globally?
Well, I've always been openly honest. Like, I've always I've always gone and watched local women's grassroots teams, but I've never been as familiar with the WSL and football
Hmm.
games, women's football games until the last few years, and it started going bigger. Obviously, I watched the tournament um, in last year. I'm looking forward to it this year as well. So I'm really getting into the women's football. But I think that just sums it up, because I don't think it's had the publicity and it's not been as big as it has now. And you see it as a whole in general now. They're breaking records, like no matter what country. It's like England women, I think it was against USA. I think a
Yeah.
friendly we had breaking records, Barcelona women, and it's just gone from strength to strength. And I think it's just because, and I'm not saying it's all down to her game too, because it's not. There's a lot of inspirational women in the world, and just how they kind of pushing it more. Obviously, they're making it. They're making it more out there as well, which is good. Like you see it on Sky now, you see it televised, which I think is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, it's just going from strength to strength, and I think it is because people are making positive changes, and there is a lot of women football talent. Fans are obviously more comfortable going like female fans, and it's just amazing to see. It's like some of the young girls, since the Lionesses did win, obviously through her game too, social media and just seeing things on Twitter, there's more and more girls wanting to get involved, play inside, and it's just so brilliant to see, because as a female fan and supporting like football and loving football for so many years, I never had that. And I think this is why I want to make positive changes now, because I would have loved something like this to obviously be there when I was a young girl.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
and that's a big part. Yeah, Anuka, sir, you were saying.
yeah, man. Actually, I realized something like I can really resonate, like I can really relate with what you just said, because like Dwaipayan and I, for that matter, here, like the why of our podcast has always been about creating a footballing culture in India, and like as you talked about, how good it makes you feel when you see women, when you see young girls actually getting into the sport and all. And like through our podcast, whenever we see some young footballer approaching for us, for him to be on the him or her to be on the podcast, or when we see a normal football fan, the whole point of our podcast is we try to bring the normal football fan to the same platform as someone like say some of our previous guests, such as say Semra Hunter, or other people, like people as good as you, because I think it provides a platform for the game to grow in the country. And I think more than the money that comes in, more than anything else, what inspires us is every time we are able to bring that change. Every time, we
Yeah,
get to go to that normal fan, or we hear that story of how it's changing someone's lives. Because I think through a podcast or through any sort of creation, if you are able to bring that sort of fulfillment, I think most of the work through that is done, right?
yeah.
And
Yeah,
talking about change, so there's this interesting partnership you guys are doing with Liverpool FC. So please tell
and
us a bit more about that.
Um,
that I'll be honest, that's also why Anuka sir contacted you at the first place, because anything Liverpool